Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Friends, March was Women's History Month, and sadly today, women are at risk of being just that, history, or being erased. Where are the voices resisting this? Recently, a female student taking a gender studies class at the University of Cincinnati was given a failing grade. Why? She used the term biological woman. Well, today, we're so blessed to have Sheri Few. She's the founder and president of the United States Parents Involved in Education. That's USPIE.org, for those of you keeping score at home. Their mission is to end the U.S. Department of Education and all federal education mandates. USPIE has established 20 state chapters so far. It's growing rapidly, thank God, around the country. And that's because of the outcry from parents who want to regain control of their children's education. So Sheri is a nationally recognized leader on education policy. She's often quoted in conservative media. She spent much of the last year exposing CRT, critical race theory. Thank you, Sheri. And serving as the executive producer for a new documentary film. I love this. It's called Truth and Lies in American Education. Sheri Few, welcome to Worldview Matters.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have been invited.
Good to see you. And we mentioned the film, and we'll get to it because one of our colleagues here at Freedom Project, Alex Newman, he's a part of that. He's actually also on your advisory board, along with Freedom Project's own Duke Pesta. I was telling Sheri before we got started, if we're in the studio here, he's right outside the studio doors, down the hall, first office to the right. That's Dr. Duke Pesta. So Sheri, let's talk a little bit about the background. How long have you been president, and when did you found, I should say, USPIE?
Well, we started out as South Carolina Parents Involved in Education, SCPI, and that actually began in the early 2000s. And it's when my children were in government schools, and I was concerned about what I was seeing in their curriculum. So even that long ago, there were warning signs about the atrocious things that we see today. So it started as SCPI, and then in 2010, SCPI led the fight against the Common Core standards in South Carolina, the state where I live. And then after about a 2-year fight, we ended up with Common Core rebranded, as was the case for nearly every state in the nation who had been fighting against these national standards. So I spoke with my colleagues around the country and learned that they all had this similar experience. About a 2-year battle of trying to get good legislation passed to rid ourselves of national standards, only to end up with Common Core rebranded. So that's when we came together, expanded as a national organization in 2015, and we've just been growing like crazy since.
Excellent. And we appreciate that and all the work that you're doing. We're going to talk about the mission and the vision in a minute. But you said something very important. Common Core was rebranded. What does that mean? Because they don't call it Common Core. That's not a threat, it seems, anymore. And a lot of people might have the naive idea that it was just taken out of the government schools. Go ahead.
Right. You're so right. In fact, our former governor, at the time, it was Nikki Haley. She bragged in the media about having gotten rid of Common Core in our state. And those of us who worked on it knew that that was absolutely false. So what we have in nearly every state are standards that are called college and career ready standards. And so that was the rebranding that they did on Common Core so that they could tell their constituents, we got rid of Common Core. And indeed, in fact, our Education Oversight Committee did an analysis, so I actually have the documentation that proves that it is absolutely Common Core.
And this is a tactic of the left, by the way, and the Democrat Party and the Marxists. They actually rebrand something, change the name, and they re-implement it. It doesn't go away. And this is what we need to play more strategically. When we think we've gained a little victory, whether it's legislatively or in some other way, watch what they do with whatever it is they were pushing on America, on children. So let's talk about the mission, Sheri, of U.S. PI, Parents Involved in Education. Just go ahead and explain the mission, and even I love the vision that's listed on the website as well.
Okay, so our mission is to end the U.S. Department of Education and all federal education mandates. And the reason we chose this as our mission is we began to realize that the majority of the nefarious pedagogies come from the federal government, and they're incentivized with federal tax dollars. So that's exactly what we saw with Common Core. It was the Race to the Top grants. Now, more recently, we have the Title IX regulations that are coming out. That will harm women's sports after 50 years of advancing women's sports. So the deal is, if you don't comply with their regulations, then they threaten to withhold your federal funding. So that's how the federal government is controlling our classrooms. But what's interesting, and most people don't realize, is that only about 10% on average of a state's education budget comes from the federal government. So it's not as insurmountable as people would think to wean themselves off this funding. And especially if they go along with a blueprint that we developed last summer that lays out the steps to do this, to wean themselves off. And one of the steps is to analyze how much it costs to comply with the federal mandates. And I think what states will find that at least half of that 10% is being spent on complying with regulations.
And by the way, U.S. Parents Involved in Education is a nonprofit. We need to just make sure that's clear so people can go to the website, which again is uspie.org. And there's a picture of Sheri's daughter-in-law, April, who played a very important role in a film we're going to talk about in just a minute. But Sheri, I opened with a little tease on this actual news story. Here it is. I've got from Fox News. I printed it out. And this is the title of the article. My professor failed me because I didn't embrace DEI. Women must fight to exist. So Sheri, we understand what they're trying to do, and not enough people know about it. That's why you and us, others are trying to raise awareness. So it's interesting that she brought DEI into this, because that's wreaking havoc across the country, not only in K through 12, but especially at the university level. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I call it the Marxist movement. The roots of this is really awful. But talk to us about this story. This was at the University of Cincinnati. True story, and this is not an isolated case. Go ahead, Sheri.
Okay, so the young woman who spoke out after her professor failed her for using the term biological woman, she was a chemistry major, and she was required to take this DEI class in order to graduate. So she wouldn't have been in that class had it been her choosing, but it was required, and therefore she took it. But then when she courageously spoke the truth and actually wrote a paper about women's history and talking about all the accomplishments and all the gains, of a very palatable topic for this class. But it wasn't from the liberal perspective. It wasn't from the lens of the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion. And so therefore her professor failed her on her report. And, she needed that grade in order to graduate. But the good news is she's speaking out. She's actually working with Riley Gaines and some others who are, speaking out and doing a lot of pushback on this idea of men competing in women's sports. And so they're working together. And it's just so encouraging to see young people taking up this battle and the front lines of this battle.
Yes, and I'm so thankful. There are many others that don't have the name Riley Gaines that are fighting this, that have been impacted, whether that be losing a scholarship to a male, boy, and either, going to college. Anyway, let's go back to this article, because her name is Olivia Krolczyk. Is that right?
Yes.
So she said we're captive to this and forced to participate. And not only that, she says, and pay So they have to shell out money to take these courses that they're required. And she says for the degrees, which is why the progressive left installed diversity, equity, and inclusion courses as graduation requirements. And then she says DEI is the vehicle by which the bullies are trying to make women history and make our existence no more than a feeling. DEI concept is a shameless abuse of power and an unmistakable indoctrination system. I got to stop right there and just applaud this young woman, and I'm thankful. I'm sure she's taking the heat. I'm sure she's getting hit from different angles on this. Anything else you'd like to share on this? I mean, it mentions the University of Michigan, Duke, and others, University of Massachusetts, not surprising. We did a report, by the way, a couple months ago on the massive money that, for example, University of Michigan is spending on DEI departments and positions and all that. So would you like to comment on that, Sheri?
Well, yes, it's extremely unfortunate that we allowed this to progress to the point it has. You know, I personally was focused on K-12 education, trying to protect young children from things that were coming at them. But all along, this very liberal influence has been in the colleges and universities in our country for some time. In fact, it dates back, to the 60s when the Marxists first came over and infiltrated Columbia University. So it's really a shame that we allowed to get such a strong foothold. But now I am encouraged that some states are passing legislation to defund DEI in these colleges and universities. But, again, here we get to the point where we understand they'll probably just rename it and shift it around so that they can escape the prohibitions that the state legislatures are putting on them. But we do have to really pay attention to this, because what I like to tell people is it's much, much bigger than even just protecting children, as though that's not important enough. But it's also about our country's freedom, because they are intentionally indoctrinating children and young adults against our country. It is anti-American, anti-Christian rhetoric and propaganda. And in our film, we interview Lily Tang Williams, who grew up under the Mao regime, and she says in the film, you're going to end up like China if you don't stop. This is exactly what they were doing in our schools. So everyone has to be informed and become motivated to get involved to help us stop this, because our very freedom is at risk.
And you're not exaggerating. Thank you for putting it that way, because it is. And people who oppose this movement, as she said in the article, have been canceled, penalized, attacked, and it's going to continue, because this is a battle. It is a worldview war. There's a war on truth. And of course, the biblical worldview is under constant attack. And so the left is demonically inspired, I like to put it that way. And by the way, thanks to Chris Rufo over at City Journal, who does great work on this, exposing DEI. I think he got in Texas, I think the University of Texas or all of Texas colleges recently, I think. Do you know that story? I think they eliminated some of the DEI bureaucracy there.
Yes, absolutely. And Christopher Rufo was right on the front lines with that.
Yep, praise God. All right, friends, so coming right up with Sheri Few, we are going to talk about the documentary Truth and Lies in American Education. That's next.
Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Get free activation now with promo code DAVID. So friends, if you're interested in sponsoring Worldview Matters, email us. And the email address is worldviewmatters@fpeusa.org. And our producer, Mike Menzel, will get back to you. That's worldviewmatters.tv. That's easier maybe to go to the website to remember that. Well, we've got Sheri Few with us. She's the founder and president of U.S. Parents Involved in Education, U.S. PIE. And there's the website there, uspie.org. Let's talk about truth and lies in American education. Sheri, because we see some familiar names there to this podcast. We've had, of course, Dr. Duke Pesta. We've had Alex Newman. And we've had Sam Sorbo on. And by the way, friends, Kevin Sorbo is going to be on in a couple of weeks. A great project. Sheri, give us an overview, and then we'll talk about it. And I love that right on the front page, they're not on my watch. So Sheri, go ahead. Tell us about the project.
Well, it was sort of a vision that came to me. I understood the very urgent need to educate people about what's happening in the government schools. And really my initial thought was to educate people about the workforce development model of education, which is something very few people have heard. So maybe we'll get a minute to talk about that. But then as we were developing the concept for the film and lining up speakers, is when everything just went wide open with critical race theory and all of these other things happening. So the timing, which was totally God's timing, because we would have produced the film much earlier had we had the funding we needed. But we had to spend about 1.5 years raising money. But the timing was perfect because we were able to incorporate all of this other critical Marxist theories and the sexualization of children and all of this that just really blossomed in the last few years. So, yes, we're so thrilled that Alex Newman is one of the main stars in the film, and Dr. Duke Pesta. Dr. Pesta flew out here, and he and here in South Carolina is where we did some of the filming. And he and Dr. Carol Swain did a great presentation for one of our largest communities in South Carolina, and we used some of that for the film. So, yeah, these are our main characters. We also have Sam Sorbo, which you mentioned, and Donna Hearn, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Donna, but she started the Constitutional Coalition and held annual educational policy conferences every year. She actually passed away 1 year after we produced the film, but she's the one who's done all the research and education on the workforce development model of education. So the film covers the sexualization of children, which, is an issue I've been involved with for a very long time, as I used to write curriculum for abstinence education. But what it's become today is so much more nefarious than what I was concerned about when my children were in schools, especially this focus on the transgender ideology. It's rampant in our schools and so sad. So it's the sexualization of children, the critical Marxist theories, which is more than just critical race theory. It's critical queer theory, critical gender theory, all encompassed in something they call culturally relevant pedagogy. And then we focus on the fake history that's happening in the schools, the rewriting of history, the 1619 Project. And we have a couple of authors that were interviewed who wrote books on how the history has been rewritten in our country and has turned children against America. And, there's probably not any other country in the world that teaches their children to hate their own country. I mean, even the communists are smart enough to teach their children to love their country. So we know that this is an intentional agenda, and that's why we're sounding the alarm, because they want to turn all of the children in this country against their country so that they can see unrest and rebellion and topple our freedom and exchange it for a communist Marxist agenda.
Yeah, I mean, socialism is that next step to communism. And by the way, it's not an exaggeration, because as Christians, we are called to influence, salt and light. We are called to make disciples, right? The left is very successful. The enemy is making disciples for this godless worldview, godless worldviews, godless philosophies. And these are demonic agendas. Think about it. The population control, they're trying to, have young children be confused about who God made them. By the way, every human being is created in the image of God. But I'm off my soapbox now because we're talking to Sheri Few. I want to mention real quick, the website is Truth and Lies Film, truthandliesfilm.us. You mentioned that it's based on a true story, so it's documentary styled. Sheri, and your daughter-in-law is one of the stars. Tell us about that.
Yes. So my daughter-in-law, April Few, shortly after she married my youngest son, needed some work that she could do at home because they very quickly had my first grandchild. And so I offered her a job to work with me in U.S. Pie. But I told her in order to work for me, there's some required reading she'd have to do because I knew that, she had learned a lot of the things that we're combating in schools and she needed to know the truth. So one of the first books she read is Crimes of the Educator, of course, co-authored by our Alex Newman. And her eyes were really open. So the story begins with her talking about how very liberal she was before she began reading and working for me. And she was just surprised at how much she didn't know. And she thought it sounded like conspiracy, but then did her own fact checking and found it all to be true. And then she became a champion, a young person who really wants to educate other parents like herself about what's happening in the government schools so they can protect their children. And she is still that champion today, still works for U.S. Pie. She's one of our only part-time staff, but she's very passionate. And in the film, she portrays her passion. She shares her knowledge. And in the end, she chooses to homeschool my grandchildren, which makes me very happy.
Oh, my goodness. Whew, right, Sheri? Wow, a sigh of relief. Because the battle, it's far from being won when it comes to the government-run schools. So, by the way, where are you based? Did you mention that?
South Carolina.
South Carolina, that's right, you did. So let's talk about a little bit deeper in some of the talking points of the movie. And you said, critical race theory, and thank you for pointing out these are Marxist theories. It's not just CRT. There are some bigger issues there. Thank you for saying fake revisionist history like the 1619 Project. And when you mentioned sexuality, I mean, at some point in a school or in a child's education, they are going to be taught health and biology. But then we say, well, parents should be teaching them sexual content at home or sexual ideas. But in the schools, use the word on the website, it's explicit. We're not talking just about health. We're not just talking about, sexually transmitted diseases or whatever. We're talking about explicit. We're talking about indoctrination in some of these LGBTQ lifestyles. And I'll let you just go ahead a little bit further on any one of those points you would like to, Sheri.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I was in the field of abstinence education for some time and wrote several curricula. And so, it was our goal to offer an alternative to the sex education children were getting in government schools. This was 15, 20 years ago. And so even in states like South Carolina, we had the homosexual lifestyles being introduced in middle grades and other things like that. But since then, of course, it's become explicit and even pornography in some instances. Our libraries are full of pornography available to very young children. And this whole transgender ideology has just become rampant in early grades on through, to adults. And so when I talk about this, I talk about how it changed because you'll recall in the 90s there was a character called RuPaul that was we used to call them cross-dressers. Then the term drag queen came up, but he was sort of an anomaly and just kind of a strange thing. And we just all kind of laughed and said, well, that's interesting. He likes dressing up like a girl, but we didn't think of it as a sexual situation. So we've gone from that in the 90s to here in 2024, where we're hearing large numbers of young children being groomed into this lifestyle. Yep. And so, and it's like one example is in Arizona just last week, it was exposed that they were advertising an LGBTQ clinic off campus, but it was advertised through the schools. And of course, it was hosted at the public library, which is the other arm that's being used to indoctrinate children. But children could go there without their parental knowledge or consent and legally have their name changed, and they'll help them to create pronouns, and they have a dress closet where you can choose what clothes you want to wear. And we're talking about 8 to 11-year-olds. So this is how sad it's become. And even in that article, it talked about other clinics that were being offered to children as young as 4 years old. So it's just really, really sad. It's quite sick, actually. And,
Yep.
you know, there's one piece of this people don't hear much about, but there's a new term called MAP, and it stands for minor attracted person. And so that is the trajectory for these sick individuals who are preying on our children, is they want to normalize and make acceptable another form of sexuality, which is actually pedophilia. They want it to become normal and legal, and that's the end game with this. And so people really need to wake up to what's happening and say enough is enough, like many of us have.
But Sheri, they told us it's not a slippery slope, right? Decades ago, right?
That's right. When we were fighting gay marriage, it was, no, we just want to have equal rights with everybody else who's married. We knew better.
They just, right. So very briefly, over on your Twitter page, twitter.com, StopFedEd. Tell us about these awards that you give out, because in April, you just gave out an award to South Carolina librarians for hiding explicit books from concerned parents. How did they get away with this? How did you find out about this? Of course, I know you're in South Carolina, and I know we did an expose of the American Library Association last year, and they are anything but supporting the biblical worldview. They're just antichrist, demonic. But go ahead, Sheri, these awards that you give out. Briefly talk about that.
Okay, so last year we started what we call the Millstone of the Month Award, taken from the scripture in Matthew.
Millstone of the Month.
Millstone of the Month.
Love
and so, you're familiar with the scripture, I'm sure. It goes something like, if you're going to harm little children, you may as well have a millstone tied to your neck and be thrown into the sea. So awesome. We believe that these people that are harming children with the atrocities that's happening to young children in America's schools, unfortunately, there's an abundance of nominees every month to choose from. And that's how bad it is. But we award who we think is the most egregious every month and highlight especially those who haven't had any kind of public outcry for their actions. So that's our Millstone of the Month Award. And yeah, like I said, it's such a shame that there are so many to choose from every month.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's sad that we do have to do something like this, but it's calling attention to it in a fun way, but it's opening people's eyes, hopefully. But I really appreciate that, Sheri, with a little jab in there. But so is the best place to watch the film Truth and Lies, film.us, is that the best place to watch it, or can it be found elsewhere?
No, that's the website for the film. You can purchase it or download it from that website.
And your website, uspie.org. And anything else you'd like to tell us as far as contact or information before we let you go?
No, if they'll just go to one of those two websites, uspie.org, they can find the film there too, or truthandliesfilm.us.
Great. Sheri Few, thank you for your time today. I appreciate your work, and I know the audience that is viewing absolutely does as well. God bless you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Oh, my goodness. That's great. A Millstone of the Month Award. Oh, we could start a whole new national movement, and we could find a lot of those to give out. Anyway, we've got to move on. Thank you, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. And as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.